talk about a great woman. Our story begins in 2 Kings 4. Elisha had passed to Shunammite, where there was this great woman. This is American Standard Version, and other translations may use noble or other words, but it's still not an adjective that's used very often when it's talking about people. We're going to look at her actions and her story in the Bible. In this period, prophets went from town to town to meet with people. And this woman notices Elisha and his servant Gehazi and feeds them whenever they pass by her house. Later, she tells her husband that she thinks he's a man of God or a prophet. So maybe Elisha's just starting out, because Elisha's a famous prophet. He helped kings, he helped other prophets, he did tons of miracles. He's probably not an introvert. He would have been the one on FaceTime or Zoom if he'd been quarantined. He was always out there. Because he's coming by all the time, she wants to do something nice, so she adds a room for him onto their house so that Elisha would have some place to stay and put all his stuff and relax when he came through the area. So she made Elisha's travel a whole lot easier on his little circuit and gave him a place to just chill. Elisha really appreciated her kindness and help and food and everything, and asked, well, what can I do for you? Do you want a good word with the king? I know him pretty well. How about the local guys? You want me to put in a good word for you there? He's basically offering her access to his network. Her response is, I dwell among my own people. In other words, she's content. She didn't care about meeting famous people or the king. She just wanted to be home with her people. Well, Elisha couldn't let it drop. He's kind of like a dog with a bone. So his servant makes a suggestion that she needed a son. Her husband apparently is older, and they didn't have any children. Elisha thinks that's a good idea, clears it with God, and tells her that she's going to have a son. She's like, don't be messing with me. I don't believe it. And of course, a year later, she has a son. A few years later, the son is out with the reapers, and he has a headache. So when he has a headache, he goes in to his mother, and she holds him. And of course, he then dies in her arms. She puts him on Elisha's bed, goes to her husband, asks for a donkey and a servant, and tells that she's going to go find Elisha. She doesn't tell anybody what's happened. She just has to go see the man of God. Her husband must be pretty cool, because he's like, whatever you need. So she goes to Mount Carmel, which is about 30 miles away, and she falls at Elisha's feet. Her comment is, I didn't ask for a son. And Elisha understands that she's grief-stricken, and you can feel her grief because now he's gone. She hurries back to the house with Elisha, and Elisha goes into the room and prays to God. After he prays to God, he then stretches on the child, and then he does it again. And the child finally becomes warm, sneezes 7 times, and then opens his eyes. He then calls her into the room, where she bows at his feet, takes her child, and leaves. But that's not the end of her story. The rest of her story is mentioned in 2 Kings chapter 8. Elisha goes to the woman and tells her that there's going to be a famine in her area for about 7 years, and that she needs to leave. There's no mention of a husband anymore, so it seems like it must be her and her child. She and her child leave and go to the region of the Philistines and live as immigrants for 7 years. When she comes back, her land has been taken and she doesn't have access to it. She goes to the king. The king was talking to Gehazi, who was telling him the story about the son being raised from the dead by Elisha. She comes up. Gehazi testifies who she is. The king then gives her her land back, and whatever product was from her land while she was gone. Of course, there's been a famine, so it probably wouldn't have been much. I think this woman's story is in the Bible for us to learn from. She helped others without any expectation of reward. She was just being nice to the man of God. If someone who could do miracles had an awesome network and asked to do something for us, would we say, nah, I don't think so, I'm not interested? I think our tendency would be to ask for something back. But she wasn't. She was content with being where she was. When she was distressed, she focused, and you could tell how fixated she got. She was going to go and get this in front of God. She was so intent on getting to God, and you could see from her actions how important it was when you have a problem to go to God. The prophet told her that there was going to be a famine. What if there'd been a pandemic and you were told to take your child and go away for 7 years? How easy would it be to do that? I think it takes faith to do what God says sometimes, and she did what God said, and I think that shows her faith. Her actions, I think, give me a really good example of what it takes to be great, and she's a great Bible story for us to learn from. Thank you.